Hey guys, what is up? SuperKmanrocks here, and I am back for another LPL video. If you guys are fans of the channel, you'll know that I actually uploaded an LPL video earlier today. I did the LNG EDG as well as the top esports and JD Gaming series in the semifinals video, but honestly, the losers finals has just concluded, and I feel like today, there's no better day than today to upload a video recapping that. So, in this video, we're going to be going over the losers finals, and it certainly was a series. I am sorry if you're not a fan of the LPL, if you subscribe to my content, you want to see the other regions. I do promise they are coming. LCK finals, LCS first round, LEC first round, all that stuff will be coming throughout the week, but if you're a fan of the LPL, today is your lucky day because you're getting double the dose. So, before we get into anything, let me know down in the comment section below how you guys felt about this series. It was a very interesting one, and definitely one that didn't go exactly as I planned, and probably not how you guys planned either. So, let me know how you felt about it down in the comment section below. But let's not waste too much more time. We definitely want to get into this series, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're only going to be going over one today. We will be previewing another series at the end of this, but really, today's episode is going to be talking about Losers Finals here, and Losers Finals was a matchup between the number 1 seeded top esports team and the number 5 seeded Edward Gaming team. Now, both of these teams getting here in a little bit of a different way. Obviously, top esports taking care of business against EDG earlier in the playoffs and narrowly missing out against JDG in a best of 5 just a couple of days ago to make their way down here to Losers Finals. EDG, on the other hand, obviously dropped that series to top esports in what was a very competitive best of 5. And then slaughters, basically, LNG coming in. Both teams have quite a bit of momentum, top esports being able to hang with one of the best teams in the world. Edward Gaming just obliterating LNG, a team that did make top 4, reasonably so. And so there's a lot of interesting storylines going into this. If you wanted a detailed recap, I went over that in my first overview of this in my round 3 video. You can go check that out. It's going to be up in the iCard right now. But let's just go ahead and jump right into what I thought of the games here today, starting off with game number 1. And game number 1 was a top esports win. They do take the 1-0 series lead here off of a very aggressive draft, a draft that I actually like quite a bit, and it definitely has a nice contrast to what EDG was able to put out. Top esports go for the more aggressive solo lane combination here of Yone Akali. We've actually seen quite a few teams be able to pull this out throughout the year, and I think that it's actually been relatively successful if you have 2 solo laners that you trust to be able to pull off 2, quite frankly, aggressive lanes. Essentially, what that does is open up a lot for your jungler to be able to make plays pretty much wherever they want to. Not only do you have a Yone going into a Gnar in the top lane, which is a very Yone-favored matchup, not only do you have an Akali, in which if you can get Akali snowballing, the game becomes significantly easier, but you've also got Zeri Lulu in the bottom lane, and of course, if Zeri gets the ball rolling, that game is over as well. And so you've got a lot of avenues to actively win the game. However, it's not quite as seamless as that. Of course, the Yone can be a very good pick, especially into something like Gnar, in which, in my opinion, Yone is very, very favored. I talked about this in the LCK a considerable amount this split. I really like this matchup in the favor of Yone, but it's not all that easy. He's pretty susceptible to jungle pressure if the opposing jungler did want to invest in the top side. Now, luckily for EDG, you look at this comp and you don't really see a lot of reason to be investing heavily into Gnar, but it was something to be concerned about, with Akali as well, is that if the enemy team just drafts relatively tanky, there's really not a lot of great targets for Akali to actually kill. And at that point, she's really just not all that worth it, even if you are investing gold. Luckily, again, for top esports, EDG's got the Azir, they've got the Kalista, a couple of targets that Akali is really going to like getting onto and being able to blow up in the late game. And then, of course, Zeri is Zeri. But really what I'm saying is the map was super open and super free for Tian, and he really took advantage of it. Now, Tian was someone that I've been relatively concerned about throughout the playoffs, mostly because he just hasn't been living up to the MVP status that he was given at the end of the regular season. Followers of this channel will know that I did not have Tian in my MVP race. He wasn't even in my top, really, 4 or so, and so to see him win the MVP was definitely a surprise, and he really hasn't been all that great in the playoffs. He was fine against EDG the first time around, but honestly, JJ really played well in that series, and I think you can make a real argument that he was the better jungler, and then Tian definitely got outplayed by Kanavi in the JD Gaming series, especially in those early games that JDG really just were able to take advantage of. Now, EDG kind of came into this game with a similar strategy. They saw that Top Esports had a little bit of a rough early game against JD Gaming, pretty much in all 5 games, maybe with the exception of Game 5, and they said, okay, we're going to pick up the Kalista, we're going to pick up the Xin Zhao, we're going to try to snowball Viper out of control in this lane, and then we've also got some backups here. We've got the Gnar, we've got the Azir, if we do need to team fight. Obviously, Kalista can move into that part of the game. It's not the best part of the game for her, but she's still much stronger than something like a Lucian in that part of the game, in my opinion. But overall, it just didn't work out because Top Esports played the early game really, really well here off the back of Tian just getting so many open avenues. Not only did he have significantly more jungle pressure than JJ in this game, but Wayward won, Knight won, Jackie Love won. The game was very easy for Tian to be able to take advantage of because he had so many lanes that he could just actively contribute in. So Tian's going to get player of the game, but honestly, Top Esports gets player of the game because everybody on this team won. Wayward destroyed Flandre. Tian definitely spent some time top lane, kind of, I guess, agreeing with me that this Yone matchup is very positive in favor of the Yone. He also spent a lot of time mid lane making sure that the Akali had gold. And if Akali gets gold into this comp, like I said, Scout, Viper, their jobs are significantly harder from that point on. And then you have Zeri. You don't even really have to invest into the Zeri. Jackie Love did play really well towards the back half of this game, especially in the team fights. But really, you don't even have to invest in Zeri early. You know she's going to be able to snowball late as long as she doesn't get super far behind. So Tian did a really good job of managing the aggression in the early game on the Wukong and translating that into a lead in pretty much every single lane that Top could just kind of win the game off of. For EDG, on the other hand, definitely not the series that you wanted to see. I definitely get the idea of wanting to go with a more early game focused ideology because like I said, Top Esports has shown to be a little bit more vulnerable in the early game than they are in the late game, and you're not indexing entirely into the early game like I often warn against. I very much get worried about Xin Zhao, Lucian, Nami, plus Renekton comps where you're really relying on that early game, and if it doesn't go well, the game is over. You have the Xin Zhao, you have the Kalista, but you do still have team fighting elements in lanes where I think you can generate leads. You have a Gnar, you have an Azir. Especially the Azir, I think, is something that could definitely win this matchup because the laning phase for Azir is incredibly safe, and really without jungle intervention, Azir should be able to keep Akali at bay and go even, in which case he is just significantly stronger. Unfortunately, that's just not how the game went. Clearly, they wanted to invest in Viper in the bottom lane. They did attempt to do that, and they picked up some gold, but it just certainly wasn't enough. It got to the point where Wayward was super ahead in the top lane, Knight was super ahead in the mid lane, and bot lane was at worst, like, relatively even. And at that point, the game is just kind of over because the enemy team's got a Yone Akali duo who are going to team fight incredibly well and be able to take out any of your carries in an instant. And then they have a Zeri for double backline damage. She's safe because of the Lulu. You have Wukong for either engage or peel, depending on what you really feel like you need at the time. A very good team fight comp from TES, and playing from ahead, it just made it so much easier. So Tian gets player of the game. Flandre gets dud of the game here. Like I said, just got outplayed by Wayward in the top lane. It's a tough matchup to play Gnar into Yone. It's not an unwinnable matchup for the Gnar. This is something that you can survive in. It's just something that it's very difficult to get commanding leads in. And so while Flandre was in a bad matchup, it certainly does not excuse the fact that Wayward just completely outplayed him in this game. And then even in the late game, this Gnar is supposed to be something that scales relatively well and is supposed to be a little bit difficult for someone like a Yone to deal with after, say, 25 minutes, especially something like a Wukong or an Akali. But he was just paper by the end of the game. His positioning was bad, and he was dying early. He wasn't managing his bar well, so Flandre, not a very good game in game one, so much so that he got dud of the game, but JJ underperformed, Scout definitely underperformed, Viper and Mako really never had a shot. Overall, EDG, not the best game one that they could have hoped for. But for TES, you've got to be incredibly excited. You really prove in this game that you still have the mechanical skill to go toe-to-toe with anybody in the world. Knight had a rough series against JD Gaming. It all kind of wiped away in this one on the Akali. A great game from him. Great game from Tian. Jackie Love and Wayward have been good. Mark has really unlocked a lot of what Jackie Love has done. And so, game one, you're just really hoping that TES can continue this form if you're a TES fan. If you're EDG, you're a little bit concerned. You went to a game plan that you thought you could take advantage of. It's not working, so you've got to adapt here. Maybe go away from some of the harsh early game focus, get Viper on something that can maybe scale a little bit better and fight into Jackie Love. Something like the Sivir or the Zeri would be ideal in a scenario like this. So, do they do that? Do either of these teams actively take my advice and move into a situation that I think is a little bit more beneficial for them? Well, Game 2 is definitely an interesting one, and the winner of Game 2 was TES. So TES takes a 2-0 series lead here. Now, I talk about this a lot on the channel, that 2-0 is a very dominant lead, but we just saw a 2-0 lead from Top Esports in the round before this, where they ended up losing the series in a reverse sweep to JD Gaming. Definitely not the same circumstances here, but it is worth noting that this game was incredibly close, and it really was off the back of just TES being one of the most fun teams to watch in the entire world. We do get the Sivir Zeri handshake that I talked about. I feel like this actually benefits both teams. It allows both AD carries to be aggressive. I understand why Top Esports would rather not go for the handshake, but for EDG, you have to rely on someone like Viper to be able to make plays for you like he has all year long. So you go for that Sivir Zeri handshake. And then you've also got the Sejuani that you can flex either into the top lane if you feel like that's a better matchup into something like the Jax, which ends up coming out from Wayward, or you can flex it to the jungle. You can draft something like a Gnar that can play a little bit more safe, and then you can have the Sejuani be more of a facilitator, proactive on that side of the map, and they go for the latter. I do agree with this choice in the long run. Unfortunately for them, it doesn't quite work out. Tian gets the Poppy, and honestly, he plays this end game nearly perfectly. A great game from Tian. Again, another game where he really just impacts the entire map. His ability to be everywhere has been actually insane when this team is good. This very much feels like regular season Tian again, and that is amazing to see. I was definitely getting worried with how he had played in the playoffs up till this point, but the first two games of this series have been marvelous from Tian. He's going to get my player of the game again here, although I will say it's a little bit contested. Tian just played really, really well. The player who contested him, JackeyLove. I mean, a little bit of a rough going for JackeyLove in the beginning part of this game. A lot of investment, again, from EDG into Viper. This is what has worked for this team all year long. It's really what's unlocked them and basically gotten them here to top 3. Viper does get super far ahead on the Zeri, and you could think this is going to be a very difficult game. You've got a good amount of frontline here with the Gnar, with the Sejuani. You've got Ahri charms, you've got Lulu to help protect. Zeri is set up in a really good spot to be able to win this game, but JackeyLove is such a phenomenal player and a phenomenal team fighter that by the end of this game, like, you're looking at a 5-5-5 Sivir that is doing significantly more in the team fights than the 9-1-3 Viper. And I talk about this all the time. The JackeyLove Viper matchup is probably my favorite ADC matchup in the world, pretty much with no content, like with no question, in my opinion, because Viper really is that stable presence that I can trust to get leads, but and that's why I consider him my number 1 ADC in the LPL, but at the same time, JackeyLove at his best is better than that. He is the ADC. He's the perfect ADC with perfect positioning, great awareness, great killer instincts, wants to go in on fights and actively wants to try and make big plays. And, you know, he definitely messed up a little bit in this game, but that's just what you're going to get with JKL. At the end of the day, he was able to come out in these back half of the team fights and dominate on the Sivir, do an unbelievable amount of damage, and honestly cause TES the win. I really, really think that JackeyLove could be player of the game here, but his early game shenanigans were just a little too much for me. I thought Tian also played the ending of these fights nearly perfectly on the Poppy, really negating a lot of what someone like an Ahri can do in this, and really kind of shutting down a lot of the front line and making Zeri a little bit of an easier target. Tian was phenomenal on the Poppy, so he gets player of the game, but JackeyLove definitely deserves his flowers as well. Outside of that, I like this draft from TES. Jax in the top lane, I think, definitely is a pick that works overall. I talk about this. If you can create that side lane advantage and make sure that you can get a numbers advantage elsewhere on the map to be able to pressure objectives, that's great. The worry is if it doesn't work, then the Jax is essentially useless. But luckily in this game, Wayward, even if he fell a little bit behind and died a little bit too much, was still definitely an impact. You had Knight to be able to pick up a lot of the team fight damage slack that I think was left out of the top lane. And then you have another frontliner here in the Leona that can CC chain. Definitely picked up the pace a little bit, but Tian and JackeyLove were so phenomenal that it almost didn't matter. As for EDG, so close, man. Like, Viper was in a great spot here, just got outplayed towards the back half of the game, and he was good. Like, I don't want it to make it seem like Viper threw in the back half of the game or anything like that. It's just JackeyLove played absolutely out of his mind. This was JackeyLove playing good, not Viper playing bad. I definitely want to get that point across. Viper was very, very good in this game, especially at generating that lead in this lane. Typically, if you do win as that Zeri, you're in a position to just dominate the game, but the rest of his team couldn't really step up. JJ never really had grasp of the map. Like, Tian always had a little bit more map pressure, and Tian certainly outplayed him as that quote-unquote frontline CC in the back half of the game. It wasn't even really close in that regard. And then Flandre ran it again, had another rough game where he really just didn't have a lot of pressure. He's going to get my dud of the game again here in game 2. Definitely concerning out of Flandre. He had some concerning tendencies in the regular season. It seemed like he was kind of fixing those in the playoffs, but goes back to playing against another top-tier top laner here after, you know, beating Ale and just doesn't really keep up with Wayward across these 2 games. There have been significantly more jungle attention thrown his way, and he really hasn't dealt with it in a way that's been all that proactive. And 2 games of Gnar in that respect, too. A champion that can and should relatively be safe to a lot of these picks. So Definitely a little concerning on the side of Flandre, but you were in a position where this game was very close. Viper definitely had a shot to just be able to win this for EDG. They just could not pull it away in the end. So where does that leave these two teams? Well, TES is up 2-0, and that is a phenomenal space to be in, always, for any team in the playoffs. But they know not to get complacent. They just got reverse swept in the series before this, so they know this doesn't mean that the series is over by any means. And for EDG, they also know that the series is not over. They know they can win 3 games in a row, and it's going to be really exciting. This is a team that really pushed top to the limit the last time they played. Can they do it again here in game number 3? Well, game number 3 was a top esports win and a 3-0 sweep. I believe the first one that we've gotten in the LPL. Oh, no, we had JDG and LNG, but one of the first ones, and definitely one of the more surprising sweeps in the playoffs. But this was a very close game, I have to say. Even though Top Esports won this game, they won the game with a gold deficit. That should tell you everything. EDG had Soul, which put them in a really good spot. 3 Cloud Soul, 3 Dragon Cloud Soul. They had, a really, really strong Ahri. They had a bunch of gold on Flandre in the top lane. On the Aatrox, they were actually in a relatively good spot, mostly due to their great early game. I think at one point in this game, they had a 10k gold lead or something like that, something that should have been actually unthrowable for them. But at the end of the day, some mispositioning really cost them and really cost a lot of their game. But before we get into what EDG did wrong, because they did mess up a little bit here, you just have to say it. I don't think Top Esports can lose a team fight. Like, they are that team right now. I know JDG series happened, but, like, watching this series, it really feels like this team is actually unbeatable in team fights. Like, if they can just 5v5, even from, like, super behind, like, I'm talking 10k gold behind, they still feel like the better team in team fights, and it's unbelievable, and a lot of that is just because JackeyLove is the best team fighter in the world. Like, it's really not all that close when he's playing the best League of Legends he can. He is the best team fighter in the world, and he proved it in this game. He's gonna get the player of the game on the Zeri. We know Zeri can take over the game, but often she doesn't have to do it from down this much gold, and JackeyLove's positioning was so phenomenal. Mark did a great job, I need to point out. Mark was very close to getting my player of the game here as well. On that Lulu, making sure that JackeyLove had all of the time that he needed in order to do everything he had to do. Hell, he even became bait at some points just to make sure that the enemy team weren't going to go onto Zeri and make sure that she got as much damage out as possible. Her damage numbers in this game were insane. But a great job by Wayward, a great job by Knight in the back half of these games to be able to kind of be the secondary damage dealers, quote-unquote, to the secondary facilitators for this Top Esports team. Just the precision of this team in late-game team fights. If they were ahead, this game would have been over in 20 minutes because they would have won one team fight and been able to end the game. They were behind the whole game, and they still ended it in 35 minutes. It was actually insane. A phenomenal game from Top Esports. One of the most impressive performances I have seen in League of Legends in a very long time. This is almost an ego-boosting performance because, I mean, how do you play this well from this far behind? They were down 10k gold. I can't stress that enough. And at that time, they just straight up beat them. They were just straight up the better team down 10k gold, which is unreal. So props to JackeyLove. He was phenomenal in this series overall, but a great game from him here. And then, unfortunately for EDG, they couldn't hang on. They got leads. Scout had a bunch of gold. Flandre had a bunch of gold, but that's not who you really wanted it on. Neither of them really do a great job of being able to catch the Zeri. You have the Vi to try and be able to do that here with the point-and-click ultimate. But JackeyLove's positioning is so immaculate that when JJ goes in, it really isn't all that hard to peel her off of the Zeri, and it becomes very difficult to actively deal with Zeri at that point if you don't have the perfect follow-up. Really, a lot of the problem in this game in the last half of the team fights was, unfortunately, on Viper, who I've been singing the praises of, but this game 3 really was not it for him. He goes 0-4-2 on the Sivir. This was a game that he needed to step up in, and he was really the big damage dealer, and he was really the only one on the team without the gold, and that was the problem. If he had gold in this series, I truly believe EDG wins it, but unfortunately, he doesn't have gold, and therefore, there's really not a lot of that consistent backline damage. Aatrox can go in and get all this lifesteal and never really die, and Ahri can go in and assassinate a target and really cause some confusion with the charm, but at the end of the day, once that's done, you still have a Zeri on the backline, and she's going to be able to win these team fights. So, unfortunately for EDG, Viper having a bad game and getting my dud of the game here in Game 3 is a little bit costly for them, as they didn't have the consistent DPS that they needed in order to win the game here. So, in the end, definitely a rough break for EDG, but you gotta give credit to TES. They suffer that really rough loss to JDG after getting reverse swept. They keep their mental, and they're able to come out here and just dominate EDG. Yes, Games 2 and Games 3 were very close, and EDG definitely had a chance to take both of those in ideal circumstances, but you got to give credit where credit is due, and TES definitely showed up today and played some of the best League of Legends that we've seen a team play in a long time. They are a very deserving team now to move on to the LPL finals. Now, I have to say, with this EDG loss, JD Gaming have officially confirmed themselves into Worlds 2022. Whether it's the first or the second seed, that will be decided by the championship, but it's good to see the two teams that finished first and second in the summer split are getting the 1 and 2 seeds as they deserve. But, you know, for EDG, you still have a chance in the regional gauntlet. Honestly, in terms of power structure, this team has a very good chance at being one of the top 4 teams in the LPL. Even if they, you want to talk about Victory 5 or RNG maybe being a little bit better than them, they just have to be better than one of them. And we've already seen them be able to beat RNG. I think you can make a real case that they are better than Victory 5. EDG has to not let this get to them. They got, blown back here. They got swept, but these games were close. You definitely had a good early game plan, and if you get a couple more things to turn your way, maybe you get some teams that are a little bit worse in the late game than TES, you should be in a good spot to be able to qualify for the World Championship. So you can't give up now. You still definitely have some work to do, but for Top Esports, you got to be happy. We're definitely getting the 2 best teams that we can in the finals, and you got to be excited for TES to be able to bounce back like this. Player of the series for me is going to go to Tion in the jungle. He was really phenomenal, played a great series. I think you could give this to Jackie Love as well. Jackie Love has definitely been player of the playoffs, I think, for the majority of the playoffs, maybe with the exception of like 369 on JD Gaming, but really, I mean, Jackie Love has been phenomenal, and I'm really, really excited to see this rematch in the finals now. Tion feels like he's getting his mojo back. Knight definitely felt like he got his mojo back in the series. Wayward had a very good series. Jackie Love and Mark have been flourishing all split long. I'm just really, really excited for this team and for this region because what a matchup we are about to get. All right, that's going to do it for my review section. Usually that segment goes just a tad bit longer, but this is the first one where I'm only going to be covering one series in the video, and it was only 3 games, so we get a 20-minute review section. That means we can now jump into our LPL Summer Finals preview, and it is a matchup between Top Esports and JD Gaming. Obviously, we just saw this matchup in semifinals, winners finals, if you will. And we're seeing it again here in Grand Finals, the LPL Championship game. And you couldn't have asked for a better matchup. These are the 2 best teams in the LPL. They've proved it over and over and over again. And if there was anything that could top their last best of 5, which is one of the best series that I have ever watched as a League of Legends, viewer, probably in my lifetime, it's really up there. Definitely the best one of the year so far. It is a repeat of it with higher stakes here in the finals for the #1 seed at Worlds. It is on the line between these 2 teams. I'm not going to go position by position in a very similar way to why I didn't for the last series either, because I've already done that. If you want to see my position by position breakdown and key matchup of this series, you can go check out my round 4 video. It's going to be up in the iCard right now. You can check that out. That's going to go ahead, give you a little bit more insight as to how I feel about these 2 teams facing off against each other. But let's talk about where they both are. Well, JDG just had a miraculous comeback, and you can make a real case that JDG, especially pre-15 minutes, was better in all 5 games, maybe with the exception of the last one that they won. But really, JDG had a lot of early game pressure, but TES's late game macro has really been saving them from a lot of problems. Now, JDG is one of those teams that can take it, one of the few teams, I should say, that is able to take advantage of some of the mistakes TES makes early, but I really don't expect TES to come out in the same way that they did in that series. I really do believe that they're going to learn a lot from that. A couple of their players played series that just were so far below their actual talent level. I have to imagine it's going to be a lot closer to the mean here in this best of 5. Players like Knight especially, player like Tion, I think are really going to step up hopefully and make this a more quote-unquote competitive early game series. I think that could definitely make it more interesting here. Now, JDG also is a team that typically has very good late games. It's not like they're just this early game team that falls off late. It's a very interesting contrast of styles here. Now, JDG has beaten Top Esports a couple of times now. They beat them in week 1. They beat them in the semifinals. Can they do it again in finals? Can they make it 3-0 against Top Esports in series in summer? That's going to be huge to say that you were able to beat that team 3 separate times in summer. It's going to be very difficult to do, but if any team can do it, it's JD Gaming. But also, just because Top Esports has lost twice, do not count them out. It is very difficult to beat a team like Top 3 series in a row. And you better expect them to come out and be the best version of them that they have been in a very long time. They now know exactly how JDG likes to play into them. They've seen some of the drafts. They've definitely seen the playstyle of early aggression and focusing especially on a particular lane and making sure that lane wins. A lot of times it was top lane for JD Gaming. They've now seen that strategy and can work to adapt and work to figure out a way to counteract that. So I very much think this is going to be an interesting series. It's a lot of pressure to say it's going to top their last one in terms of fun value, but it's definitely possible with these two teams. If any two are going to do it, it's gonna be these two. But that's it. That's going to be this video. A little bit of a short one here. Usually don't drop half-an-hour videos on this channel, but we covered losers finals. We previewed grand finals here. A lot of fun games to talk about. It was only really a 3-game set to talk about. Not a big, long one here. If I had to predict top esports and JD Gaming, oh, it's so tough. In my original, I did predict JD Gaming to win winners finals. I did predict top esports to have to go through the losers bracket and the losers finals in order to get back here, and then I predicted top esports to win, and I think I'm gonna stick with it. It's so close. Like, it really is so close between these two teams, but I just find it very difficult for me to predict that top esports is going to lose 3 best of series in the same split to one team. They are too good. They are too consistent. I think if you get a better version of Knight, and if you just get an okay version of Tion, you're looking at a series that could very well just go 3 or 4 games in favor of top esports. But that is a big if, because JD Gaming did such a phenomenal job of being able to contain them. I very much think this will go to 5. If it goes to top esports, great. If it goes to JD Gaming, I couldn't be surprised either. But if it goes in 3 to either of them, I really wouldn't be all that shocked in that way either. It could have went to 3 for top esports in the round before. They were up 2-0. And honestly, it could have been 3-0 in terms of JD, because they had control of the entire series. It really is that much of a question mark. But what do you guys think? What do you think is going to be happening in the LPL finals? Let me know your predictions down in the comment section below. Do you want TES? Do you want JDG? Who do you have going to Worlds as the #1 seed out of the LPL? Leave me that and your game's prediction down in the comment section below. But with all that being said, I hope you all are having a great day. I hope you continue to have a great day. And I will see you all later.